Today's video is sponsored by Amino Apps. Amino is a smartphone app that connects people and their interests with other like-minded fans. Join us within the Star Wars Amino community, where you can test your knowledge by taking part in trivia quizzes or by joining the various discussions centered around Star Wars, from gaming-related conversations of Battlefront to speculation and hype talk around the upcoming new season of The Clone Wars. We will be hosting a special challenge on the app with a prize. Post your best original Star Wars meme on the Lore Master profile in the app. The one that's best received among others, or that we find to be the funniest, will be mentioned in a future video and the creator given a shoutout. To participate in the challenge and earn a chance of getting a shoutout, download the free app using the links in the description below. We're looking forward to seeing your creations and can't wait to see you all among the various discussions of the Star Wars Amino community. The clone army that fought alongside the Jedi Knights against the Separatists was the first galactic-sized military force undertaken by the Republic for nearly 1,000 years. But what kind of military did the Republic have before the introduction of the clone army? Well, for the most part, the Galactic Republic's military forces were decentralized, with the judicial forces being its main centralized armed forces, which acted more of a police force rather than an army. Though within the judicial forces was the Sector Ranger Corps, which was a far more militarized branch, with its members being trained with military-like tactics. They were basically a SWAT team. The Sector Ranger Corps were often used in large-scale slave trade and illegal spice-busting operations that required highly trained individuals. They also were allowed jurisdiction across all systems within the Republic, following leads that spanned across multiple planets. Aside from that, Worlds of the Republic were responsible for providing their own militias within their respective territories for defense against common enemies, like pirates and other hostile powers, though these planetary security forces tended to be quite small. However, there was a time where some within the Republic did garner an actual army that numbered in the tens of thousands of trained soldiers in an attempt to fight a small war in the Outer Rim. It was known as the Republic Outland Regions Security Force, and it was the closest thing the Republic had to a military before the introduction of the Clone Army, since it dismantled its original forces from the Old Republic era 1,000 years prior. Created 35 years before the Clone Wars, the Outland Regions Security Force was used for the Hyperspace Stark War, and was formed unofficially by Senator Ranulph Tarkin, the older cousin of the later infamous Wilhof Tarkin. Around this time, Ranulph was the leader of the small but increasingly political faction known as the Militarists, which was a group that supported the creation of a powerful centralized military force within the Republic, and to disband the restrictions imposed by the Ruusan Reformation from nearly 1,000 years earlier. While for most of his career, Ranulph wasn't taken seriously, the day finally came when his speeches began to resonate among fellow senators and even many citizens that lived within the core worlds, for the unthinkable had just happened within the Outer Rim. A pirate named Lyco Stark was combing his forces in the outskirts of the Republic and forming a small army. He went on to cause a ton of problems, from helping orchestrate schemes to drastically diminish Bacta supply, to disabling travel among the core and Outer Rim worlds by creating a computer virus that corrupted navigation computers that tried to use prominent hyperlanes between the two regions. This of course brought the attention of the Senate. While Ranulph was taken more seriously than before within the Senate, his idea of creating a Republic army was still dismissed in favor of sending the Jedi to negotiate with the pirates. But Ranulph couldn't accept that, so he went on to create the army all on his own, bringing in supporters of his from the various judicial force branches and planetary militias. Over the course of a few weeks, he would amass a fleet of a couple dozen cruisers and attack vessels, as well as forming an army of a couple 10,000 soldiers that were all equipped with traditional military gear. In his mind, he was going to prove to the Republic that the military option was the best means of doing things, by wiping out the Stark pirate army and bringing an end to the Bacta and Hyperlane crisis. He was going to launch his first attack at the very same place the Jedi were going to meet with the pirate leaders for negotiations. But his plans ended up falling apart when Lyco Stark intercepted Ranulph's travel plans and installed a new virus onto the newly amassed fleet. The navigation systems for more than 2/3 of Ranulph's fleet caused the ships to hyperspace jump to random coordinates, with a few ships being sent into stars, black holes, or uncharted territory. Less than a third of the initial attack force made it to the appropriate destination, only to find themselves trapped by a fully prepared pirate fleet that had been waiting for their arrival. While Ranulph's fleet was being destroyed overhead, the Jedi negotiations that were happening on the planet didn't go well either, as the pirates had no desire for peace, attacking their guests with full force. While the Jedi were able to escape, including Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Plo Koon, they did lose a fellow master, and were trapped on the planet with no means of getting off it. The Jedi were eventually able to contact Ranulph and convince him to land the surviving ships of his fleet onto the planet and to move all of his men into a giant cave that was within a mountain for safety, and so they could regroup. With communications offline, the Jedi and a couple hundred surviving soldiers were forced to fend off multiple aggressive attacks from the countless pirates for over a week, up until they were rescued by another Republic task force that was quickly created using Trade Federation ships. The pirate army led by Stark eventually fell apart as well, as the pirates lost far more in the short war than they had ever gained from all the looting. Ranulph died in the action, but was hailed as a hero by some within the Republic for attempting to do something when no one else would, and the soldiers that survived the week-long siege in the mountain came to appreciate the Jedi on a whole new level. Not only were they impressed with their skill in combat, but also by their compassion for other beings. The entire Outland Regions Security Force consisted of only humans, most of whom believed in the notions that humans were far superior to other species. But this changed within many of them due to Jedi Master Plo Koon, who went out of his way to take care of the injured and sick that were within the cave during the siege. Seeing an alien care for them in such a manner opened up many of their minds and gave them great appreciation for Plo Koon, to the point where after the battle a few would regularly meet up with the Jedi Master to thank him for all he'd done when he cared for them and for opening up their minds on the contributions of non-human species. Thanks for watching this video. Help support the channel by becoming a member on our Patreon page, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, may the Force be with you.